trial of Scott Panetti was, to me, a circus, and I think that other people saw it that way as well.
He was more obsessed with how he looked and his fantasy of being his own lawyer in a 1930s cowboy costume than what reality was, and that was that he was under trial for murder. He didn't understand that.
It would have been like an old Hollywood cowboy movie. It's nothing that anybody would wear to anything other than a costume party. It was bizarre.
In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled Panetti lacked the understanding of why he was being put to death and asked the lower court to reevaluate whether he was sane enough to execute. But the courts accepted the argument from the state's lawyers that Panetti was faking his illness and reinstated his death sentence. Now he is set to die Wednesday at 6 p.m. On Monday, the Texas Board of Pardons and Parole refused his clemency request, and his lawyers have asked Governor Rick Perry to issue a stay of execution.
We have three efforts going on simultaneously. We're in the Fifth Circuit, where we are seeking time and resources to litigate Scott's competence to be executed because his psychiatric condition continues to deteriorate day by day. We're also in the U.S. Supreme Court, where we are arguing that it is unconstitutional to execute the seriously mentally ill. And finally, we have a 30-day reprieve request before the governor, Rick Perry, saying that we would like additional time to, again, litigate Scott's competence to be executed.
Can we back up and go to the trial? Can you describe the scene in the courtroom and explain how was it that he was allowed to represent himself?
This is a question that no one can answer sufficiently. Scott was wearing a cowboy outfit during this trial. His jeans were tucked into his boots. He had on a TV Western cowboy shirt, a purple bandana around his neck, and he was waving a cowboy Bible. He was representing himself because before the trial began, he became extremely paranoid. He was off his medication, and he believed that his lawyers were in league against him. So he fired them, and he told the judge that he wanted to represent himself. Oddly, though, the judge allowed this after having sat through 2 competency trials and knowing Scott's 12-year history at the time of chronic paranoid schizophrenia. To this day, there has not been an adequate explanation by the Texas justice system as to how this man was permitted to fight for his life on his own in a death penalty trial. With Scott's execution, Texas will cross an irrevocable moral line. The state of Texas, to my knowledge, has never executed post-Furman anyone who had a history of severe mental illness and who represented himself at his death penalty trial. Now, the state did execute Kelsey Patterson in 2004. Mr. Patterson also had a history of severe psychosis, and the Board of Pardons and Paroles, in contrast to Scott's case, recommended that Mr. Patterson's sentence be commuted. However, the Texas governor, Rick Perry, let that execution occur, and on the gurney, as the state prepared to lethally inject him, Mr. Patterson told onlookers that, in sum and substance, that he was the warden, and that the correctional officers should get their warden off the gurney. He went to his death babbling, and I'm convinced, incompetent. So Texas is not exactly covered with glory in its efforts to protect the mentally ill from the criminal justice system.